Hello, my cookies. Welcome to Russell Cooks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, I have a classic Greek favorite, pastitsio. Some say it's Greek lasagna, but it might predate actual lasagna. Now, this is essentially noodles, meat, and bechamel with some cheese. You get a little bit of cinnamon in with the meat. It's a warming spice. To me, it just calls out fall. It is a little bit more intensive than a standard weeknight meal, and it uses a few more pots, but I think it's worth the effort. All right, first things first. Let's gather our ingredients for our meat sauce. I'm gonna be doing some olive oil. I'm using a little bit of chicken stock here. Some lean ground meat. I got about a half pound. About a quarter cup of red wine. An onion. You want about 3 cloves of garlic. You want about a tablespoon of minced garlic. I got some smaller cloves, so I'm gonna be using 4 or 5. Tomato paste. You're gonna need that cinnamon. You need a little bit of dried mint. Now, if you can't find this, you can just up your oregano a little bit or use some marjoram, or however it's pronounced. I feel like I never pronounce that word right. Paprika and some oregano. And then, of course, salt and pepper. Now that we have our ingredients, let's get started. I'm going to be using a medium-ish saucepan and saving my big pot for the bechamel because the pasta gets cooked in there as well, and we need the space. I'm going to start with chopping the onion and garlic here, as is tradition. And once the meat sauce is going, it does have to simmer for a little bit. I'll introduce the ingredients for the bechamel. We'll build that. Hopefully everything's done around the same time and we can get it in the oven. It is going to be a little bit of a bake. I'm going to use 5 small cloves of garlic here. 3 standard cloves should be enough. Remember, if you use one of those manual press garlic mincers, I always ended up adding an extra clove because I feel like not all of it always makes it through. All right, I'm going to put about a tablespoon of oil in here. I'm typically pretty liberal with the oil, but you don't want to be here because you don't want a really greasy final dish. So I'm going to do about a tablespoon and stick to it. And that's also why I chose the lean meat. 80-20, you can have a greasy dish. If you feel like it's a little too lean, you can always add a little olive oil at the end. Just going to heat this oil over medium heat. I think the oil's hot, so I'm going to add my onion. I'm just going to saute it. It's going to take about 5 minutes, medium heat. Don't forget to season as you go. I'll put in about a half teaspoon of kosher salt here. So while that's sauteing, let's get our spice mixture. For our cinnamon, I'm going to do about a teaspoon and a half here. And then for our mint, paprika, and oregano, it's going to be easy. It's going to be a teaspoon of each. All right, now dried mint. I think it's fantastic. It's different than fresh mint in terms of the flavor. I think it adds a lot of great minty depth versus the fresh stuff, which is, it's just a different type of mintiness. All right, about a teaspoon. This is what makes it Greek. Keeping those Greek flavors here. Teaspoon of sweet paprika, not smoked, and a teaspoon of oregano. I'm gonna put a little pepper in here. Gotta be fresh ground pepper. So our onions are sauteed. We're going to be adding our spice mixture and our garlic and just cooking that until it's fragrant. It's going to be 30 to 60 seconds. This is easily burned. That's why 30 to 60 seconds maximum. I'm keeping it moving here. Time to add my red wine. It's about a quarter cup. So I'm going to let this cook down a little bit, and then I'm going to add a good amount, about a quarter cup of tomato paste. So the red wine will brighten things up, add some nice acidity, and then tomato paste is going to add some good savoriness along with our meat to this dish. So about 4 tablespoons, quarter cup. Ooh, get the wine, I get the cinnamon, a little bit of dried mint in there. So now we're just going to cook this medium heat still. You want to really cook this tomato paste. It's going to take a minute or 2. All right, we're getting a little bit of browning on this tomato paste. Good savory depth in here. 90-10, 93-7. That's the range I would look for on my ground beef here. About a half pound. All right, get that in there. I don't think there's any sense in trying to ground meat like this. I think you just end up overcooking the meat. Starting to see a little bit of pink leaving here. As soon as I see at least half of it gone, we're going to add our half cup of chicken stock. Absolutely sub water if you want. I don't think there's a way you can make this a vegan meal, but if you want to try, you can. All right, here we go. Scrape up all those brown bits. You see, this is pretty meaty. It's exactly how I want it. There's still some pink there. That's fine. We're going to put this on the back burner and we're going to just simmer it. Let the flavors kind of build. And that's going to take 15 to 30 minutes on low. Just going to cover it. Now it's time for the bechamel. You're going to need flour. You're going to need milk. I got 4 cups of milk here. You're going to need about a cup of shredded cheese. Now, traditional in Pastitsio is Casari cheese. I couldn't find it. I'm subbing in Asiago. It works for me. It's got a pretty potent, strong flavor, and it's semi-soft, semi-hard, which is pretty much what you want. If you can't find either, a combination of Pecorino Romano and provolone will give you pretty much what you want. You're going to need butter. You're going to need nutmeg, and aside from salt and pepper, an egg, as well as 8 ounces of ziti, not penne, not spaghetti, ziti. For the bechamel, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to melt it, medium heat. For my flour, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of flour. So if you've ever made a roux before, it is equal parts fat, equal parts flour. I won't mess up my count. 5. Eric, don't mess up my count. 6. That was close. Eric. He's out to destroy me. To my flour, I am going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Fresh is best, but if you must buy ground, that's fine too. Let's say 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. My butter is melted. It's time to get these in. We got my flour, my nutmeg. Woof! I'm just hit with that nutmeg immediately, and my salt. I'm just gonna cook this medium-low heat until the flour is cooked. That's going to be a couple minutes, 1 to 2 minutes here. All right, it's cooking a little faster than I anticipated, so I'm going to say maybe about a minute here. So it's been about a minute. Let's get our milk in, slowly whisk it in here. So we'll bring this to a simmer. Flour will thicken it. We're also going to add the pasta to it. So we're going to cook the pasta in the bechamel, par cook it. And this is going to release some starches. It's going to help thicken the bechamel as well. Also, it's going to save me a pot and some time from cooking the pasta separately. So the meat in the back is done. I'm just going to let it sit off heat here. So we got our boil. Let's add our pasta. Stir it around. Ooh, look at that. When it comes back up to a simmer, we're going to cover. We're going to take it off the heat. You're going to let it sit for about 15 minutes. Hydrate through. We're right there. Let's give it a good stir. All right, I'm just giving pasta a little bit of a stir. I don't want it to stick together. I'm going to be using a baking pan, but I suggest you use a baking dish. 8x8 is ideal. If you've doubled the recipe, a 13x9 will be fine. Baking dish tends to be ceramic or glass. This is a baking pan. It's metal. It's going to cook a little different, so I might only cook it for 30 minutes. I would say 35 to 45 minute cook time in the oven. 375 middle rack. Don't forget to spray your pan. Let's check on the pasta. Oh, this smells amazing. I love it. But we're not done yet. I'm going to use a spider to scoop out this pasta, get into my baking dish. Now comes the cheesy part. So you've got your pasta. You're going to put about 1/3 of your cheese in here. And then you're going to put another 1/3 cheese in the bechamel. Now I'm just going to toss this around. Press it into a nice even layer. You want it nice and flat here. If you have them all facing the same way, good for you. I don't. All right, we're gonna set that aside. We're gonna put our egg in the bechamel. The bechamel is cooled a little bit, so hopefully I don't curdle this egg. This is gonna give a little bit of body to the bechamel, help it firm up a little bit. Keep whisking this. All right, now let's get our meat sauce here. We're gonna spread it over the pasta. Perfect consistency for spreading. You see how it's not like liquidy? More just like ground beef, like a thick chili. Nice even layer. Perfect. Now it's time for the bechamel. We're going to pour it over, let it seep in, and we're going to sprinkle our Asiago on top. We're going to pop it in the oven. It's going to take about 40 minutes. I don't know how I'm going to do this without making a big mess, but here goes. And I made a big mess. Ta-da! Something I should have done beforehand, and hopefully you learn from me. Get it on a baking sheet. Easy. And finally, our last little bit, Asiago, goes on here. 35 to 50 minutes, 375 middle rack. All right, my cookies, it's been just shy of 45 minutes. I rotated the dish halfway through cooking to get some even browning on top, and here we go. Oh boy, this is perfect browning. This is exactly what I want to see. So remember how liquid the bechamel was? Well, it really thickened up, and we got a nice browning on the top, and that came from that Asiago cheese as well. Let's cut into it. Let it rest 20 minutes before you cut into it. Let me turn it sideways for you. You get that layer of that ziti, that meat, and then that bechamel cheesy sauce. Look at those layers. That is fantastic. All right, let's give this a taste. It's just so flavorful, so moist. There's a good amount of richness there. It's perfect. The cheese comes through, and a little bit of warm spice in that meat, a little bit of cinnamon really carries it. The pasta's perfectly cooked. For whatever reason, I think it's probably the warm spice in the meat. It just really reminds me of fall. Exactly what I've been craving. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you like what you see, don't forget to follow me on Twitch, YouTube. I'm also on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope to see you next time. Take care.